Hi.
Hi.
How are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, thank you. Wonderful. I am glad you're here. I'm glad we get to do this conversation together. So, yeah, let's see. It's 3:01. Let's go ahead and kick everything off. So, hello to everybody who's joined. Ooh, excuse me. My name is Lauren. I use she, her pronouns. I am the communications and social media manager at GAS. And I am your new Glass Reflections host. So I'm currently located in Seattle and would like to acknowledge that I am on Duwamish land and like to honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. And then I'd like to welcome everybody to Glass Reflections, which we host every first Thursday. This time we pushed it back a week due to Instagram's lovely technical problems. And each first Thursday we interview glass artists, businesses, educators, and basically talk to them about how they use glass to explore self-care, how they create sustainable art careers, and basically gives an opportunity to highlight different glass artists and their resiliency. So today I am super excited to welcome Queens-based visual artist specializing in stained glass sculptures and architect Valeria Divinorum. Valeria earned a master's degree in architecture and urban studies at the University of Belgrano in Buenos Aires and has attended residencies in Argentina and the US. She's currently an adjunct professor of new media art at LaGuardia Community College, and she's also participated in a bunch of art residencies at senior centers and public schools in the Bronx, so doing a lot of great work in the community. Welcome.
Thank you.
So I know that was a bit of a intro there, but I would love to hear you kind of give an introduction about yourself and your background and your artistic practice.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So, as you were saying, I'm from Argentina, Buenos Aires. I'm living in New York for already 6 years now. My formal training comes from the School of Architecture, but my art training comes more from the underground scene and more DIY spaces in Buenos Aires. In 2016, we started up an art collective based in Buenos Aires where we would do art installations with garbage. We would recycle materials such as styrofoams and different sort of plastics and materials that were not being recycled at that moment in Argentina. And we would use those to create art installations with black light and paint those with neon light. Most of our art events were during like music festivals and some other cultural spaces where we were able to install these pieces and create collectively. So it was a group of women that we would exchange ideas and materials and techniques, all from different backgrounds, like visual arts, scene set designers, and architecture, of course, too. Some of my friends from school. So we would create these installations inspired in nature and also in some of South American mythologies, because, well, we were, in my work, I also try to interpret the relationship between nature and human body. I think that comes a little bit more from my architectural background. When I studied, I was able to study the proportions of human body in space. And then from that, I think also from studying architecture, it was easier for me to start using glass in a way that, and light in a way that creates spaces too. So my art after working in these more recycled installations, I was able to work with other materials such as glass, video projections, and light to create more immersive art installations, and using the glass as a lens to explore optical perception of space and using the intangible properties of light to create spectral colors around the space. So a little bit, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, yeah, I thought that just is a great segue, I think, because I know one of the things that really stood out to me in kind of your art, your description, your artistic statement about your own work was the phrase sacred geometry, within stained glass. And so I thought, that seems like an interesting kind of segue if you could speak to that as well.
Definitely. So in architecture school, I was saying we study space, right? And we start seeing, when I start studying architecture, the first year I remember going in the bus coming back from school after a lesson, and I would start seeing the elements of architecture in the buildings with more detail and more depth. So it was an experience where I felt like I start seeing into the dimensional aspect of the world. And then when I was finishing school, I studied for a year at, it's in Spanish, it's Taller Escuela del Sur
Mm.
in Buenos Aires. And my mentor is Andres Jacob. And he is an artist that has been working with sacred geometry for a while. So that's how I was able to study sacred geometry through the use of metals and glass. And sacred geometry also is a term that basically is the mathematical proportions that appear in nature. And then, of course, in our bodies, in plants, and the universe, like galaxies. And so we can see these patterns from the microcosmos to the macro.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, for example, the golden ratio is a proportion that explains a little bit about the balance of the universe, and has some mystery in how the universe began. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why it's called sacred geometry. It's not that it's a religious thing. It's more of, like some sort of research in the meaning of life through nature, which for me, finishing architectural school and not being very happy with my degree, not being very happy to work in an office 9 to 5,
Mm-hmm.
to build and design skyscraper buildings that make no sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to discover this school because of my mother. She was the one that actually got me into glass.
Oh.
And she worked at that school where I learned with Andres. And because of that, I think I went all over the place, sorry. But in that moment, I was a little bit sad and depressed, and it was hard for me to find a little bit more sense to my life after being like 6 years in architectural school.
Mm-hmm.
So when I studied a little bit more of sacred geometry and the patterns in nature, it kind of gave me some sort of hope where I felt like I belonged to something special in the
Mm-hmm.
universe, and I wasn't just alone in my own research of the meaning of life. And it was very helpful, and I feel like it's also it has a lot of symbolism that comes from ancient cultures, but also it's a symbolism that creates a common language between people, because we all can relate to things that sacred geometry represents, such as the 4 elements, or like the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Fibonacci sequence, which
Yep, absolutely. Well, and I think, I love, I say, hearing you be so transparent, I guess, is more what I love hearing about, your struggles with the kind of those transitions, because I know that's something that, probably a lot of us can relate to. We spend so much time in school studying something, thinking that that's our focus, and you kind of learn a lot about it, obviously, as you go through the programs. And sometimes when you get to the end, it's not exactly what you expected. So yeah, I would love, if you could talk a little bit more about, from your kind of self-care as an individual, and kind of looking at your artistic practice, of like what that journey was like for you, and kind of how you kind of worked through it, and in order to build the kind of creative practice that you have been working with over the past couple of years.
um, well, the point of inflection in my life as an artist was when, in that moment where I was finishing architecture, I had a trip with a group of friends. We went to Peru, to the Amazon in the jungle,
Mm.
and we had a ritual with a shaman, and it was very insightful for me because I was able to go through a process of kind of like ego death, where I was able to see myself as an artist, and I could see things that inspired me to make art with, which was already related with light. Um, so I feel like the glass and Tiffany technique, which is what I do, it has a very meditative practice for me, because not only the sacred geometry, that it's already a structure that has its own balance by itself, which when I work on my pieces and I have them on my table, it almost feels like a Tetris, an intuitive Tetris. I don't have to think where the piece fits. I just start placing them together and they start aligning. So for me, I think every time I do art, and as an art teacher and professor, I usually try to bring the idea of creating art as a healing experience in a way that we can express our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and those could be white light or black light, you know? So I'm not saying that I'm a white light person right now. I'm just saying that the referencing the process of being in a chaotic moment in my life and using more garbage and black light, and then coming back to the US and discovering glass and all the type of different glasses that you can find here, like the bevel glass, the dichroic, textured glass, and it's accessible. It's still expensive, but it's still, you know, much more accessible than in Argentina for sure, because it's the industry of glass here is much bigger. Usually the glass you buy in Argentina is fabricated here. So
that makes
with
sense.
inflation, it can be a little bit harder.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think that's a great, especially as you're talking about individual, pieces. I would love to kind of talk about a specific performance art show. I see in 2019 you were part of the Healing and Resistance Glass installation to benefit the LGBTQ Center in New York City. So could you tell us a little bit about that experience and kind of what element was particularly healing in that?
Definitely. So around 2018 and 2019, I started being part of a collective that we would also create these events where there were sound baths. So there were instruments from all over the world, and like the singing bowls, you know, all these, I don't know how to call them because I'm not a musician, but they're very like healing sounds and music, and which is actually the kind of music that I'm into when I'm trying to work at my studio, you know, relaxing. So these events would have these live sound baths. We were also, it was before COVID, so we had cacao tea ceremonies in these events. We would also have, so my part was the crystal lights. I call it crystal lights. So what I do is I film glass, different type of glasses and texture, and I film the light going through them. And then I use those different videos with the computer software to project onto the space. And in these events, people will lay down on the floor. It was mostly like yoga studios that we would do these things to. And people would lay down on the floor, and I would create the visuals, the crystal visuals that are mainly these light layers of light that I would also capture and scatter in space using crystals in front of the lens of the projector. And so it was very meditative. There was also Reiki healers as part of the event. And so everyone was able to have different ways of relaxing and having a moment for mindfulness, you know?
And how do you feel about that as the artist of being able to kind of provide that sort of, that healing opportunity for people?
Well, I think art has social. Oop, is this? I think there we go. It was cutting off. Sorry. So yeah, I was just saying that as an artist, I feel responsible in society to bring ideas and spaces for people to gather in safe ways and healthy ways. And um, I want to bring a message as an artist. And I think one of my messages, because I try to do many things, I like to work on collaborative projects for communities, and I enjoy being part of a art community too. But yeah, mainly it's forgot what I was saying. Sorry. So yeah, just working with light and feeling. I think light art is also kind of like a healing experience because it creates atmospheres.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the color can affect our emotions as well. So if there's a room that it's covered with different atmospheric colors, can create an emotion around us. So I think that, yeah, as an artist, I like to explore that side where I can provide some sort of benefit to people, where just experiencing my art is not something pretty or interesting. It's also something that can help you to calm down and just relax and contemplate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think especially in a COVID, post-COVID, current COVID world, it's people are always definitely looking for that these days, and will probably continue to in the future. So yeah, kind of I'm on that tangent, kind of jumping around, because why not? Let's just go with the flow. I'm curious, yeah, how much has your practice, changed since the pandemic? Have you, especially, it sounds like are you still in the States or you're still in New York?
I'm still in New York. I was in Brooklyn. I moved to Queens now, but still
Mm,
very close to Brooklyn too. Well, the pandemic was, of course, it was very hard for many creative people because it was a hard moment for the entire world. So I try to keep my art practice in my routine, because it would help me to abstract a little bit more from the reality and just focus on something else that it's not in my head.
mm-hmm.
Using your hands and focusing on the feeling of working with materials and feeling the materials with your own hands. It's all this process helped me to find out like some sort of temple inside of my studio, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of how it affected my art, well, it actually expanded my art a lot because I was able to be much more time at home.
Mm-hmm.
So after, a little bit of the beginning of the pandemic, that was very, very hard. I was able to start having, after a year, I guess, I was able to start having more art shows and also being more focused on my art because I had more time at home, and my studio is a home studio. So I work here, and it's easy because in New York, I used to work a lot in the Bronx in person, and I had 2 hours commute to my jobs and 2 hours back some days, or a little bit less, but about 2 hours. So that would take a lot of my time and also energy to come
Mm-hmm.
back and work on stained glass, because you do put your body on when you do your work. So uh, and somehow it would benefit the amount of production that I can have and the amount of time that I can invest in my work. And then of course that brings its consequences, where I can expand my work and have an interview with you that I feel very grateful for.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. Yeah,
Because it puts a microphone in my voice. It's like, okay, I'm an independent artist. I don't have any sort of representation. Not sure if I want one. I really like to be independent and be able to share my work without, like any boundaries with
mm-hmm.
anyone in any part of the world. So I like to stick to my own independence and be able to do that. And definitely throughout COVID, I was able to connect with people and expand a little bit much more my work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's, yeah, I mean, I think that definitely makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of us found some opportunities in the challenges that COVID brought us. And then, finding that new light, then all of a sudden kind of brings new challenges as you try to find what balance looks like in your new normal. So
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that it definitely made for some productive art making, which is always great. Um, so I would love, let's see what time we have about, yeah, about 15 more minutes, depending on how much time you have. So I would love to talk a little bit more too about one of your collections, a new collection, Natura Sanctuary.
Yes. Yeah, that's a collection that I'm working on that has it's inspired in nature, but it's mostly focused on the healing properties and plants.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the pieces that I'm working on in this collection come from that source of inspiration. So I try to find different flowers or leaves and plants that has these properties or have been used uh, in many countries because of their healing properties. Could be from chamomile for a tea to ayahuasca. You know, it's like a mix
Mm-hmm.
of different healing um, magic in the world of the nature. But I actually started doing more organic shapes after working with Tyram. He's a metal artist from New York City, and I was able to work with him, and he does Art Nouveau designs,
Mm-hmm.
which was my favorite architectural style when I was studying architecture. And I was able to practice a lot the curves. And then when I was doing that, I I I thought about working with flowers and stuff like this, but also I grew up with a Georgia O'Keeffe print on my
Mm-hmm.
kitchen, and I would see that every day. We didn't have TV, but we had that painting, and I would always see that. So after reminding myself of that artist, I thought, oh yeah, Georgia O'Keeffe and the shapes that are very feminine and you know, and I'm in Argentina. We were fighting for legal abortion for a few years,
Yeah.
and there was a huge trans feminist movement happening over there that I was part of. So I started doing vulvas and uteruses and stained glass too. So
Mm-hmm.
it's part of that same collection.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's always great to see a lot more, feminist forward artwork being put out there, even in the, I feel like we continue to make so much progress for women artists, but then, there's still so much male domination out there, patriarchy that needs to be brought down. So, yeah, that's great to hear. I'm glad that you were able to have that time too to study with somebody to get more of those organic forms. So now you're a double threat on both ends.
Yeah.
So, what are there any other new projects coming up that you'd like to talk about or highlight, or things you're getting excited working on?
Well, yeah, this is actually a crazy month. I never had so many shows together, and it's a little bit overwhelming, but I'm very happy about it. I'm not going to complain at all. Um, I have throughout the month two art exhibitions. It's at Paradise Palace in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
Part of their members. There's a member art show. I have a sculpture there, Sierpinski Pyramid. I also have another art installation at the Plaque Salle in Long Island City in Queens that it's going to be throughout all the month until the end of October. I recommend everyone trying, if they're around, to if they want to see my work. That one is a good example because it has light and it has a motor, so my piece is spinning, and also that sculpture has pieces that my mom hand painted with grisaille technique. So
That's
that's and then also I'm putting up together a festival that I was able to we won a grant with my friend Cosi Arias, and she's a musician. Her project is Agua Viva, and we're putting together a healing art festival at the amphitheater of Herbert von King's Park in Bed-Stuy. So that's the 23rd from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. And as the day gets darker, I'm going to be doing visuals, and I'll have sculptures with lights. So the amphitheater is going to be full of colors and, and
oh my
patterns.
Oh, that sounds so cool. I know that they, yeah, for a while, I think, and they even might have done it here in Seattle. There was this whole like trend of people like projecting things onto buildings and like just using projection of all these digital things. But I think what you're creating, I mean, that sounds so much cooler of creating natural light forms and projecting them out. I wish I could make it out to New York to be there. But yeah, please send me the information and I'll push it out on our channels for sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. And yeah, those are the shows that are happening now. And then one of the things that I also think it's interesting to highlight about that show at Plexel, one of the things that I research a lot in my work is the other dimensions in geometry that are not like the three dimensions that we're used to seeing with our eyes. Because of how our brain works, we only see images, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So, for example, the fourth dimension in geometry involves movement, so it involves time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I add movement and light to my pieces, because of the glass properties, I am able to create those reflections and moving patterns that can unfold the parts of this fourth dimensional geometry that exists within nature and the object, but we don't perceive. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like unfolding pieces from other dimensions too, which is
Oh, I love that. I totally love that. I mean that's definitely one of, I mean, I think that's why so many of us become involved in the arts is because there's something transcendent about it and that, it's hard to explain to somebody who doesn't get it that, what's the difference of looking at a sculpture on your computer versus seeing it in real life? And I'm like, there is such a difference that it has power in it, in the spirit of the object. So, yeah, I'm excited to have the opportunity to experience one of your installations one of these days. Hopefully, I know the video only doesn't do it justice, but it's still wonderful to still see a glimmer of it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's hard, right? Glass in general and light is really hard to capture. I'm always struggling with that.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for sharing what you've shared so far. And yeah, I think the last question I'd love to get from you is, like, who do you look for inspiration, and who do you look to for creative or entrepreneurial support?
Well, definitely the community that I was mentioning earlier, Paradise Palace.
Mm-hmm.
They are the best. They're also artists, and they have this community that's extremely diverse. And there's so many type of artists, like visual artists, and that has been also supporting my work a lot. They were the ones that suggested that I would do smaller works, like sun catchers and jewelry. So I haven't been doing that in a little bit, but I also starting being able to sell like smaller pieces because of their support and their ideas, and they also promote my work a lot and create networks between artists and other opportunities to expand our voice as well. So
Oh, that's great.
them and Holo Center, of course, too. Holo Center, Chashama, Flux Factory, all those different, yeah, they support my work a lot.
Great. Wonderful. Well, so we have a little bit of time left. We can either do a self-care practice if you have one that you'd like to work through, or we can answer questions from the audience.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, let's see. I think I have a little button here. Oh, nope, that's something different. Ah, okay. Let's see. I know somebody asked, what was the name of the collective that you worked at in Argentina?
The name is Salvia Divinorum. So my last name, my artistic name, Divinorum, comes from my art collective. So it's kind of like my
Ah,
sisters.
that makes sense. Wonderful. Okay. Well, yeah, audience, if you have any questions, if there's anything else you'd like to know about Valeria, about her practice, now's your chance. Give us a comment, give us a question.
Yeah, and
Otherwise, yeah, go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just gonna say in terms of the question you said earlier about self-care. um, throughout the years of working with Tiffany technique, I realized sometimes the materials are pretty toxic. So I was able to learn through working with artists that work with glass to use a mask, to use gloves, to ventilate the area, you know, to be able to make sure to check in with my posture and feel how, make sure how I'm feeling about it. Those things. I think there's, can we see spinning art online somewhere? On my Instagram, there's a few videos of my spinning artwork. Um, and yeah, maybe from there. if you want to see there, then conta tu experiencia en la pandemia. Oh, one of my friends from Argentina, she was asking about my experience during the pandemic and how my connection with nature and the plants in my garden, because we have a small little backyard over here in New York where we live, which is pretty rare. It has kind of like a microclimate. It has grapevines around the fence, all over the 3 fences, and trees and ferns. And I've been growing some different plants and flowers that also have healing properties, so I could see them and explore them and work with that new collection that I was talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that definitely, yeah, that super resonates with me. I became into plants during the pandemic as well, and it's truly, it's amazing to be able to have something that proves that today is different than yesterday. Proof is that it grew. There's a new leaf, so time has passed.
Yes, it's so nice. I love the plants you have there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Oh, I see somebody says, can we travel to the 4th dimension together? I'm always telling my husband that we need to remember to think 4th dimensionally.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. With light, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Well, wonderful. And I think, let's see if I hit this button. We have one. Oh, there we go. Do you think you'll stay in New York? Or, yeah, that's a great question. You think New York is going to be in your future for a while, or do you anticipate moving around the world or wherever opportunities take you?
I think I'm a person that I never actually planned to move to New York. I kind of let myself flow with what life was telling me where to go. I'm not, I don't believe in planning in life too much, even though sometimes I am an anxious person and want to think that I have control over it, but we don't. Every time I think that, it doesn't happen. I'm hoping I can visit Argentina much more times and for longer periods throughout my life. I think New York has been providing me so many opportunities since I got here, that I don't imagine myself in another place right now, because of, even though it changed after COVID, it's still New York,
Mm-hmm.
and you meet wonderful people and so much art. So I don't know, but I would love to go check out the East Coast. I never been Seattle or in California, and
Yeah.
light over there is beautiful. The sunlight, LA
Mm-hmm.
and those places I want to go, but
Yeah.
see when I can do it.
Exactly. I know we're having our gas conference next May, so maybe it'll be a good excuse for you to come out to the Pacific Northwest.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would love that.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. So I think we hit time. So thank you so much, Valeria, for joining us. And can you let people know where they can find you and your work online?
Yes. Should I type in my website, or how should I?
You could just say it verbally, and then I can follow. I'll put it in the description.
Okay, so my Instagram is Valeria Divinorum, and my website is valeriadivinorum.com.
Easy
And
peasy.
you can email me from my website or direct message me on Instagram if you have any questions.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much to everybody who joined. We will be uploading this to the gas platform soon. And then we will see everybody hopefully next month. And thank you so much again, Valeria. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.